Welcome to Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. What if you could learn from experienced real estate investors, find out what got them to where they are now, get insight into their daily habits, and take these insights to inspire your own growth? Each week, Jonathan Green shares an in-depth look at the mindful approach to real estate investing. Jonathan is a lifelong real estate investor, advisor, and coach, as well as the founder and team leader of Streamlined Properties. Whether you're looking to start from scratch, get to the next level, or just for a straightforward and honest approach to real estate investing, Jonathan seeks to provide a free mentorship program you can take with you anywhere. Now, here's Jonathan.
Let's go. It's time to get on the house hacking train. Yep, that is a real thing. Everybody wants to do it. It's still popular. It's been popular, but so many of my guests on this show knew about it before it even had the terminology. And that's what you're going to hear about today. But before I get there, I just want to remind you that we have 10-minute video clips of every episode. They come out about a week to 10 days after the episode airs on the podcast channels. It's a great way to put faces to the names, see us in person, see what we look like and how we talk together on the podcast. Then you can go back, listen to the whole show again, make sure that you're getting all the information. This week, my guest is Shawn McEnteer, licensed agent like myself. He's also a professional house hacker, and he learned how to do it with kids, and he's still doing it with kids. So you can do it. Let's go. It's house hacking time. This is episode 118 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with my guest, Shawn McEnteer. Shawn is a New Jersey realtor and professional house hacker who has a lot of experience house hacking with the family. This is going to be interesting. Shawn, welcome to the show.
I appreciate you having me, Jonathan.
Yeah, no, it's excited to talk to you. We probably met in person like a year back after all that time of just kind of knowing who each other were. So I'm glad to get you on the show and get your very specific house hacking experience out to people out there.
Yeah, my pleasure. And I think it was in front of a house hack, actually, that we met.
Yeah.
It was always fun.
Yeah, of course. So let me ask you this. How in the world can you house hack with 4 kids? Because people want to know this, because I think people with bigger families assume like, oh, well, our time for doing this type of thing is up. Tell us how you do that, and then we'll go to the backstory.
Absolutely. I mean, I think so much in real estate is just around beliefs. And it's like, through education and everything, there's a lot of limiting beliefs out there. The biggest one I always run into is like, you can't do it with kids. It's like one or the other. Do it before you have kids, or when their kids are older. And me and my wife just did not fall into that trap, I guess, per se. And we took on this mentality of, it's not that we're going to do it before we have kids. We're going to do it because we have kids. And it was such a motivating factor where, I had a driven mentality, but when my first son was born, he's going to be 10 in March now, so we're going on a decade. It was such a drive the day he was born. I was like, wow, this is motivating. So I'm not going to say go have kids to motivate yourself, but that's how it worked for me. And
I mean, to each their own, but I know what you're saying. I mean, when I saw my son, just his head for the first time, was like everything changed. The way that I personally looked at it, and obviously you too, changed. And that does come to what you're going to do with your money and your living situation, because you're trying to create something lasting long term. Did you know about house hacking though at that time 10 years ago?
Not yes and no. It just wasn't called house hacking. Right. It was live in one unit, rent out the other. That's what we knew. Yeah. So before your son was born, had you started your first house hack, or did you actually do it with a baby? So great question. Yes and no, because started, I guess, backtracking to the first property we had was a single family. We knew we wanted to invest, did not know how to invest. I think we made that mistake that many of us make, where we used a family friend realtor, a very nice individual, but not much investing experience. Bought a single family house. Then I found Bigger Pockets, the real estate forums, the network and everything. We're like, all right, we want to get to certain places. Not going to do it in this property. Sold it. At that point, my son was born. Moved back in with my parents, and then we were on our way with our second child.
Yeah.
Which was born the same week we closed on that first house hack.
Oh, wow. Awesome. Yeah. And at what point in there did you get your license? Were you licensed before? Or did it come? A lot of people I find get their license after a weird experience, not necessarily, like you said, a realtor who's bad, but one that just doesn't understand your goals, which we've talked about before.
Absolutely. And on top of it, I got my license in this whole process of acquiring that first property because I knew I wanted to. And I was like, you know what? Why not have access to get in the properties a little bit easier? So that very first transaction, I had my license and I was partnered with another agent at the brokerage I was at.
Yeah.
So
trying to figure it out.
Young age.
Yeah. So, well, growing up though, when was the first time that you remember real estate being interesting to you?
Oh my goodness. A very young age. I guess my backing was always the stock market with my parents. They were heavily into that. But my grandma would always talk about real estate in New York City. He's like, oh, they're building these massive buildings. And I had this little itch. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. So at a young age, and it was just completely random. It's just like the conversations you have with your grandparents, I guess, if you have a memory where it's like they could talk about anything. And my grandma would just randomly talk about New York City buildings. And I was like, cool.
Yeah.
I remember at a young age.
Yeah. Well, she wasn't ahead of her time with the house hack, but she was definitely interested in real estate. But when was the time that you decided like real estate was going to be the vehicle? Was it just when your son was born, or was it part of buying that first single family and then realizing, okay, maybe that wasn't the best, investment for us at the time?
Yeah, great question. So initial itch was sometime in college. I started researching it, getting into it. And I actually found Bigger Pockets around that time, but I didn't really take it serious yet. And then it was the cultivation of a lot of factors, just communicating with other people, rich dad, poor dad, like everyone else's story, kind of falls into it. But then once I had my son, that's where I was like, we got to do things differently. And I started taking it more serious, came back to Bigger Pockets, really started doing that research. But I kid you not, the initial Bigger Pockets discovery was, I literally came across it Googling something along the lines of how to be a millionaire overnight. And I found this article of like, you're an idiot. You're not becoming a millionaire overnight.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So part of that big discovery, I'm like, I'm going to do real estate. Bought that single family. Then kind of came back to Bigger Pockets. A lot of back and forth going on here, but long story short, found my way back there. And then I took Bigger Pockets much, much more serious.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, though, because I remember when Bigger Pockets was new and I found it too. And I was like, oh, my gosh, like this is amazing. But like at the time in the beginning, no offense, BP, that it was harder to navigate because like sites weren't that cool yet. So you're trying to figure out like, how do I interact in the forums? Like who's real? And so if you're not fully invested, you won't spend enough time to find the right thing. So then when you came back the second time, you're probably in digging mode. Like I was, I'm just like in the forums. I'm like, wait, I can help people. And like you're at the time where you're like, oh, wait, I can learn all this stuff, and you figure out along the way. Is that kind of how it worked?
Yeah, exactly. It was just, I'm going to listen to the podcast, and I was just listening to podcasts every month and doing that. And then I finally found one with, a gentleman from New Jersey, and I was like, oh, wow, this guy is in my backyard. So it's like, oh, cool. Listen to the podcast and connected. So it was a lot of combination of things happening, and then the perfect storm created in a way. And I was like, okay, I'm hooked. I'm on Bigger Pockets now.
Yeah, and going back to where we started, though, what made you guys know that you could keep doing it as you kept growing your family? Because obviously you were like, we like house hacking, but we like having more kids, so let's do both.
Yeah. It was the simplicity of house hacking, and then just the drive that we wanted to be young adults while children are growing up, and we wanted to have children in close age. Yeah. So once we had one, we're like, okay, now I have to have another.
Let's go. Yeah. So in your house hacking journey, I often talk about, we've probably talked when we met about uneven multis, which is, a larger amount of bedrooms in one and then smaller in other, which when you're single, it's great. You live in the smaller unit, but when you have a family, you want to go the other way. So are those the type of ones that you're looking for? Because you're not going to find a ton of 4.4s. Those are going to be crazy prices, and maybe the rent roll doesn't work. So tell us about that part of your journey as the family grew. What types of different configurations of units you were looking at?
Yeah, wonderful question. Fortunately for us, the first property that we found was a 4-2 on top of a 4-2. So we had the first level in basement, finished basement, legal and everything, had the ceiling heights, had the egress windows. So we're very fortunate in that capacity. And then the second level that we were renting was also a 4-2, which had the attic space that was finished. So we were lucky in that capacity. But at the end of the day, it really didn't matter because, when you have young children, it's like they're sleeping in your room half the time anyways, or, there's no right way of doing it. It's not like you have little Timmy's bedroom and little, all these.
Yeah, right. One benefit of clustering 4 kids is like you can all just sleep in the same room. You have a playroom and a sleep room. It doesn't really matter. And our bedroom, of course. Yeah.
So even as we were renovating this, it's like we had a 4-2, but really we had a 1-2. Because the other 3 rooms were storage for materials. We would renovate the basement, live on the first floor, move to the basement, renovate the second floor. So at the end of the day, we could easily have done it in a 2-1 or smaller. We just happened to have the 4-bedroom, 2-bath, and really, like I said, it was a 2-1.
Yeah. But what you were just saying is also common for people who flip with families. We used to move the kitchen into the living room, which is basically just whatever you do. You try not to use the stove with the hood. You get the refrigerator out there, you hit the hot plate because you're moving stuff around. And then we would plastic one room. So you're like, the one room is good. No paint and dust is getting in there. But that's where you did it. That's where everything happened.
Jonathan, I kid you not. The day my daughter was born, so she's my 3rd child, she was born, and I have photos of it. She was born into a slop sink of a kitchen. I just tiled the floor, so I gutted the whole thing, and all I had was a slop sink. So I'm like, we need to have running water to at least wash our dishes or something.
Yeah.
We moved the kitchen downstairs. Partially it was just a microwave at that point, so we were doing everything we could to just eat out as much as we can, but you still have to wash the baba or whatever, the child food, give it some sort of sanitary, right? But we had no kitchen or anything. So that.
Yeah. So I know in your journey from the first house hack, you actually went into business, and then businesses have helped you go back and forth with the house hack. So tell us a little bit about that, because I think that's interesting. I've always been interested in hybrid businesses. I love mixed use because you can do your own business in that and then own the rest. So tell us how you guys started to do this with businesses that helped you grow on both sides.
Absolutely. So, the property and the strategy that we've always loved to implement, especially in northern New Jersey, where we're a heavy appreciating market, is finding distressed properties, renovating that. And is that cold brew you have there? I'm right there with you. I got mine.
Mine's tea.
Oh, there we go. I like tea as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'd find distressed properties, renovate them, and you get this point where you could possibly hit a home run grand slam with what you're doing, where you find a distressed property and turn it into a massive equity gain. So in our very first house hack with a $500,000 purchase, and a few years later, it was $800,000. Now it's well over $1 million.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of equity, and we came into a situation with my wife's business where she was able to become an owner, but you need to have the collateral in order to do so. So what we decided to do is put that first house hack up as collateral to acquire ownership of the business.
Yeah.
Which has been absolutely amazing because now, it's another income stream and something that we appreciate and love, that we've been a part of for a long time. And so you have a house that you love and you have a business that you love, and they're kind of funding each other.
Yeah. I mean, I watch a lot of Cody Sanchez material, and obviously she started in real estate, and then it's now really like business heavy. But I like putting all these things together. Greatest thing about real estate is that business can be also a part of real estate. You could house hack a mixed use somehow if they have the units upstairs and it's 51%, you're in good shape. Then you can put your business in. So where did you go from the first one? Where was the first one? What town was it in? Because we obviously live near each other.
Yeah, Summit, New Jersey.
Oh, okay, awesome. So the 4-2 over 4-2 was in Summit.
Yes.
Yeah. So anybody who's listening who knows the area is like, wow, you got a great price in. And of course it's going to be up there now. And Summit doesn't have they have a decent amount of multis for Morris County, but not a ton, not talking like Essex County multis in there. So where did you guys go from there?
So then we went over to Essex County, went to Caldwell. We bought a very similar style distressed property, and a 2-1 and a 4-2.
Yeah, so there's the uneven portion. Did you guys live in the 4-2 or did you cram yourselves in the 2-1?
So at that point, kids were a little bit older. And of course, we kept up with the strategy where I kid you not, anytime I was calling a relative, they'd ask, is it a new house or a new child? But my fourth son was born into that house hack. So we were in the 4-2. And really the only reason for that is because the 2-1 needed a lot of work.
Yeah.
I knocked it out. At that point, I had my systems in place. I got the experience from doing multiple kitchens in the first house hack. So now you get much, much better, much more efficient. Knocked that out. And we turned it into a luxury style 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath because we added a half bathroom to it.
Yeah.
And we got very, very good rent there. $2,600 a month, where Zillow was estimating, I think, $1,700 or something ridiculous.
Yeah.
We got top rent in it. So that was paying the bulk of the mortgage on that property alone. So we're like, okay, let's stay in this upper unit. And we wanted to renovate the third floor while we were in the second floor. So it worked out well to get tenants on that 1.5 while we were living upstairs. Not so much with the footsteps running around, but my tenants, they swear they never heard us. And I was like, you
get what you get when you live under maybe give them a discount at some point. But you made a good point about doing the 2-1 so nice. I mean, now, of course, maybe at this point you said you might have thought about short-term rentaling that or doing midterms because you can earn more on that. But I think people forget that multis are in competition with apartment buildings, and apartment buildings have amenities and are usually newer. But if you really do up the unit and the exterior is good, you're going to get more because people want to live on their own. They don't want to live, on their own, meaning just with one person instead of like an apartment with 20 people. Have you found that that's kind of played a role as you guys have renovated the ones that you weren't going to live in over the years?
Oh, 100%. It's just the amount of people that do not want to be in an apartment building. And I think you run into this a lot because people get intimidated at first. Maybe not the abundant mindset yet where they're like, oh, there's an apartment building being built down the street from my property. This is so scary. They're going to take all my business away.
Yeah.
Like, that's amazing.
Yeah,
exactly. The value is going to go up. The demand's going to go up. It's going to put the place on the map, essentially. And all of a sudden, you're going to have a lot of people applying to your rental.
Yeah.
In a very positive way.
Yeah.
Because if they're paying X amount over there, you can get very similar pricing. They're going to be amazing comps for you. And now all of a sudden you say, hey, you only have one neighbor instead of 30 neighbors.
Right. One neighbor, you have maybe half of a backyard, you have your own driveway, and you're protected in a different way. And apartments serve the purpose. So people live there for a reason. It's convenience. There's also shared amenities. So you're not going to have a gym in the basement at a multifamily unless you put it in, but also you're going to pay up for that. So I think that you make a really good point. New things going up only helps. It just means more people coming to the area. So if 20 people think and see these new apartments, but then they also see like, oh, wait, there's a swank multi and I don't need to have more neighbors, that's just going to put more eyes on it. That's a really good point. So you went from Summit to Caldwell. Caldwell market, again, very similar, scaling up, and a very sneaky amount of multis, I think, there. Yeah. Personally, a lot of older ones that come up. So where did you go from there? Where are you now?
So now we're in Boonton Township, which is what we call a live-in, fix, and flip, which is, I don't think we're going to do the flipping part of it, but once again, going back to that strategy of acquiring properties that are distressed and adding the value to it. So, we have whatever we decide to do in the future. If we were to sell, we'd probably stay in town, but we have substantial equity. Whether we're going to cash out, leverage it in a different way.
Were there any stops between Caldwell and Boonton?
No stops there.
Yeah. So with a family, though, because I think this is important, I really like to get the full scope of why investors do what they do. You have 4 kids. They're old enough where school's an issue. So how are you deciding what areas to go and what timing is right with all the kids to say like, hey, look, now we're going to go from Caldwell to Boonton. We have to switch schools. Because I was a flipper. I grew up with a dad who was a flipper. So my kids moved schools probably more than they wanted to. And sometimes I feel bad about that. How have you figured out how to do that, the best way possible, I would say?
Yeah, it really, in honesty, it doesn't become a concern until probably 6 or 7, maybe even 8, where they really start getting those friendships. I mean, my oldest has no memory of the friend. He remembers the school and he remembers the house, walking to school, but he can be like, oh, I miss Joey. He doesn't have a memory of any of the children that he interacted with. So really, it's just that emotional side of things. If you can overcome that, it's not that big of a deal. But I mean, like, you just think about it around the world. I mean, the military, they're doing this all the time. And whatever your goals are, it's like, we could stay here, work the rest of our lives, pay a mortgage, and retire when we're 65. Or we could sacrifice, which most of the time in real estate, especially in house hacking, is giving up that instant gratification to get the long-term success. So we had that mindset from the start where, we were going to do this right now because it makes sense. Now that we are set in schools and everything, but we have multiple, millions of dollars worth of equity on our property.
Yeah.
So we don't have to do it anymore. But if we wanted to, like if this is property number one, I wouldn't hesitate. At a heartbeat, I'd say I'm selling this place and I'm moving into a duplex.
Yeah.
And your kids, you're going to move, you have soccer teams, you have friends elsewhere. You don't necessarily have to stay in a school just because that's what most people do.
Yeah. When you're going from through these three, are you keeping the old ones? Or are you selling and upgrading and then using the profits to go back into other things?
So the 2 house hacks that we have kept, and the home we're in right now, we've kept. The only property that we sold was the first single family.
Right.
And did you not? We sold that just because, we wanted to, which
wasn't your thing.
Yeah. It was a small live-in flip. We didn't know what we were doing at the time at all, but we got some profit for it. We're like, we leverage it to get to those multifamilies.
Yeah, this is a great note for listeners who are newer to the game, because I think people, there's a tendency for people to get obsessed with doors and how many doors you have. And people talk about, they have 50 doors, and then you ask them how much they're making, and you find out they own, 4%, and they're making, a couple hundred. You have a limited amount of doors, but these are very, very good doors. And
yes.
They're the ones that you left, the 2 that you left, are probably really cash flowing at this point for you while you guys are in this next one, right?
Oh, absolutely. Everything's covered. I mean, I haven't paid a mortgage out of my pay in over a decade, probably around a decade. This is the last time I paid, something out of our actual pay, where, the 2 properties substantially pay for the one that we're living in right now.
Yeah. And that's important because, as you said in the beginning, we're both in northern New Jersey, and the appreciation potential is gigantic. So you can really, you can keep your cash flow fine, but you're gaining appreciation each year, which then you can use like you did to leverage to get the business in the first place.
Absolutely. And on top of it, and I always say this with northern New Jersey, is like, the numbers don't look so great that first year.
Yeah, exactly.
Year 2, a little bit better, year 3, but it's really year 5 and so on. Year 10, that's when things really start picking up. But you don't just get the appreciation of the property, you get the appreciation on the rent side too.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's jaw dropping what, some of the numbers that you can come up with just because the demand of our market.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you have to know and understand your market to be able to do that well. So let's give some advice to those people who are looking to house hack. It doesn't have to be in New Jersey, but you, as I, are licensed. You work with a lot of house hackers. Let's give them some help on what should they have in order. They come to you, they say, hey, Shawn, I want a house hack. What's the first thing that you want them to have kind of in order so you can make sure that you're trying to get them set up the right way?
Yeah, normally, obviously, it's a discovery call where I learn about their situation and know exactly what's going on. Do they have kids? Do they not have kids? All that kind of stuff. What's most important to them? Because at the end of the day, there are musts. Like I must live in this location, or I need proximity to here, X, Y, Z. A lot of times in our markets, proximity to New York City, which goes great because I'm like, okay, well, that's how you're going to attract really high quality tenants.
High rents, yeah.
Most people want proximity to NYC, so that's really good. And like myself, when I first started, I needed to be into the city pretty frequently. So we found properties that were close to NYC. So it's always that discovery call to kind of learn a little bit more about them. But really, it starts from the finances, knowing how much you have, liquid cash, where do you stand on a mortgage, how are you getting qualified? Mistake my wife and I've made is, we got qualified for a single family at first.
Yeah.
We didn't know that, that this is going back to not really being on bigger pockets. It's just working with the ABC Realtor. Like, oh, here we go. We get qualified. And we found out like $300,000 we qualified for back in 2013 or whatever it was. But then when you get qualified for a multifamily, it went up to $550,000.
Yeah.
Because you qualify the rental income. So,
and you'll qualify even higher if you're on the lower part of the uneven multi. If you have a 4-2-2-1 and you live in the 2-1, you're going to be able to qualify even higher because the income level on the other unit's going to be higher. Yeah, I've found that house hacking as a term has become so popular that a lot of people are interested in it before really knowing what they are getting into. Are you ever looking at them trying to figure out, like, are you really going to be okay being a landlord? Because being a landlord isn't what people think. It's not passive. And especially if you're house hacking, you can't hide from them. They're going to knock on your door at all times.
Yes. That is probably the biggest thing you have to weigh up is how do you approach it? And I've always kind of played it back and forth. I'm like, do I tell them I own the place? Do I pretend to be a property manager? Do I just?
I think a lot of people think that, but they'll find out anyway. Even if somehow you got in an LLC or they didn't look, they're just going to figure it out. It's not hard.
Like, why do you show up every single time? And like, you really are the best tenant in the world.
Plumbing
like,
call. Hold on, you just came from next door. I don't understand. Yeah,
I'll put a mustache on and glasses. But it's like I kind of came to the realization, like, okay, I'm just gonna say I own this place. I'm a neighbor. And some people appreciate that, some people don't. Maybe not, but I'm like,
you know what?
Anyway, so
yeah, I agree. I think it provides a much better level of accountability both ways because you have more accountable to keeping the exterior and sharing and making sure laundry's all set. But I do a lot of landlord rental listings, of course, as you know, and a lot of times we'll get the question like, well, does the owner live there? And I don't know if they're asking because they want them to or not, but I assume not. Which is still weird to me because I think you get better service if the owner is there.
Yeah, it's like it really, if they're not going to live there because the owner lives there, most of the time it's something you don't want happening going on.
Right. Or you got a meth lab going. Something not great is happening. Yeah, no, I agree with that. Hey, it's Jonathan. This is a brief interlude from the episode so I can talk to you about the fact that my real estate team, the on-market version, we just changed brokerages. So now we're at Real, which is Real Broker, LLC, and it is a progressive brokerage. We're super excited to be there. And one thing about what we do is we are an on-market investor-friendly real estate team. So you're probably here because you're interested in real estate investing or you're an experienced real estate investor. We work with hundreds of real estate investors because we are focused on understanding investor dynamics. 99% of real estate agents don't understand what investors are looking for. We do. It's my background, and I bring it to my team every single day. So if you are looking for investor assistance in the state of New Jersey, we have you covered. Parts of New York, good. A little bit of a part of Nevada, all good. Also, if you don't know an investor-friendly agent in your area and you need help, just reach out to us. We will connect you. We have investor-friendly friends who are agents all over the country. Let's get back to the show. What are some other tips when you figure out their locations, they know their budget, and now they want to start looking? What are you telling about unit configurations and what they really need to do to get prepped? Because in our markets, these multis get 40, 50 bids. So, you got to prepare for the long haul. How are you getting them set? And how can we help these listeners who want a house hack kind of prep themselves for what they're up against?
I always start with a conversation on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being a complete gut, 10 being turnkey. And I say, how open-minded are you to being as close to 1 as possible? The closer you are to 1, the more opportunity you're going to have.
Yeah.
If you go up against a 10, you're going to overpay, bidding war. It's going to beat your IRA or your 401k. You're going to get the tax benefits. You'll be in a good spot. But if your goal is to get places faster, maybe accelerate the journey, you can be close to 10. Now, that doesn't mean you have to do a complete gut renovation. Doesn't mean you have to tear walls down. Doesn't mean you have to do an addition.
Yeah.
But things like renovating bathrooms, renovating kitchens, adding a bathroom goes such a long way and eliminates a huge amount of competition because there are people out there they're scared to do it. They don't want to do it. And I'm like, it's not that scary. I didn't know how to do any of this stuff. Figured it out. I kid you not, the first time I got a freaking window quote, it was $30,000. I ended up putting those windows in for about $5,000 myself in a weekend because I didn't know how to do it. But at the end of the day, it's like if you're open-minded to doing some of these renovations, taking on something that needs work, you can get places much faster in our market. So I always try to maybe push in the direction, just be open-minded to it, because it's going to benefit you long term. If you are, you're going to find a lot more opportunity, because believe it or not, the turnkey properties, they're not as common. And when they do show up, they're bid like crazy. Yeah. So being open to renovating and going through that process is going to give a lot more opportunity, where, let's say there's 100 properties out there on the market. There's a good chance most of them need work, because, at the end of the day, as a landlord, when I go to sell these places in 30 or 40 years, I'm probably not going to renovate it first. I'm probably just going to sell it as is. Yeah. And I think part of the conversation that you were just talking about, great information, is also how much they're putting down. Because I think if you have the money to put 20% or more down, you can get those turnkeys and you're going to cash flow. But if you only can put 5%, 10% down, or you're trying to get higher, you're using an FHA or some type of modified, you're not going to be able to win those against the other people anyway. So you kind of do have to play in that little area of like, well, I'm using a low money down, but this also needs a lot of repairs. Can I make all this work? So those are tough conversations, though. And I think this is where we go back to what you said in the beginning, and which I've experienced too. Before we were licensed and we work with other realtors, you quickly realize like no one knows anything about investing. I always say it, maybe 1% at tops knows about investing. They're not going to understand. If you want a house hack and your realtor doesn't know what house hacking is, please get another realtor. It doesn't have to be one of us, but please make sure that your real estate agent understands what your goals are. And you made another good point before, that you're running the numbers that the first year isn't important. I always tell people, if you're planning to go, year after year house hack, one, leave, do it again. Like you run the numbers for the first, but I don't care. You're not going to cash flow in New Jersey, as a first year house hack. You're running them for when you leave. Are you at least break even the year after you leave? And then you start to tack on the appreciation. Do you agree with that? Absolutely. Absolutely. There's never been a time that I'm aware of in New Jersey where, and this is from mentors and so on, where it's like, we're buying a house today and it looks great. No one shows up like that. Yeah. But we all look like geniuses. We all like guru geniuses of the world 5 years from now. Yeah. And it doesn't matter, do you want to look like a genius or not? You look at these properties today, it's like, it's scary. It's intimidating. Even for me as an investor, I'm like, the numbers don't make sense. Yeah, I'm looking at clients who want to buy, and I'm not buying because the deals aren't good enough for me, but they want to live there also. So I think that's why the house hack is important, because Absolutely. You can't discount the benefit of the opportunity cost of being able to live in one unit and pay down your rent that way, or pay down, you have no rent in a single family. So I really think that's the thing. And it's, you made a really good point before about you have to be a little bit uncomfortable doing a house hack if you want to make the most money. If you can buy the turnkey, great, that's a great house hack. But if you really want to turn out and do what you did, where you can keep the properties, you're going to have to, live in one room, fix another. That's really the way to do it. Absolutely. And it's like you go back to when you buy these properties, it's always intimidating at first. And it was for us. The numbers didn't make sense back in 2015 when I bought our very first one. It just didn't make any sense. But 4 years later, 3 years later, 5 years later, whatever it is, it's like, wow, I can't believe this just happened. And I always make the analogy, because when I first started, we were this close to pulling out of state investing. Yeah. Not a chance in heck would we ever be where we are today if I started buying, another state. And not to bash another state. I'm not saying that other states are bad. No, it wouldn't have fit what you wanted to do to get to where you are this quickly with those assets. Yeah. Exactly. It's like, you have to come up with 25% down every time. You must pay for property management, all these things, where now we self-manage our properties. We're doing, the most we ever put down on a property is 10% down. A lot of times we're doing 5% conventional mortgages, which are great. And, to save up substantially less to grow your portfolio like that, it's just life-changing in that capacity. Yeah. So house hacking becomes ridiculously attractive, kind of going to your point where, earlier, where it's just, you're renting somewhere, regardless of what it is. Like, are you going to live in your parents' basement forever? You're probably not going to want to do that. Right. All right. So now you're renting. All right. How much you pay to rent? Rent's not cheap. It's probably $2,500. If you have kids, you're probably paying $3,000 or more. So now all of a sudden, do you think that you can get a mortgage that someone else is paying you $3,000 a month, and it'll be less than what you're paying right now. Probably.
Yeah.
So let's say, your mortgage is $5,000. You get a tenant that's paying you $3,000. Okay, now you're only paying $2,000 a month to an asset that you own.
Yeah.
You can't beat that. And house hacking just be very, very desirable. It's like the compound interest on steroids, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. And you add another layer on that by being licensed. Like, obviously, we can talk about, we have a lot of investors on the show who are also licensed, because then you get the commission. So it's like, okay, well, now I got even more off the price. And then you do well on inspections and you get 10K. I remember when I closed my personal residence, it's like I got the commission. The commission was like 16, and then I got 10K in credits. And I'm like, well, okay, I didn't pay that. I paid that minus 25K. Like my value is better than what I did because I got extra cash in. And I think, so what would you say as an investor, would you think that people should get their license? This is a common question. It's all over BiggerPockets. Should I get licensed? I mean, I think there's arguments for yes and no. What's your take on that for people who are investing? They like the access portion, but they don't know if they, want to have a license.
I like the idea because I lived through it where, I kid you not, before I put an offer in, before we closed on that first multifamily, remember, we were living in a single family. So we had to renovate it. We had to get this done. We put it on the market. In that year span of doing all that, I was licensed. I kid you not. I saw 150, 200 multifamilies before I even started putting offers in.
That's
on
amazing. Yeah.
So I'd either go out with colleagues and follow them. I'd literally just follow them on the tours. And it's like, there's no chance in heck I'd buy this property. Wait, I don't want to be in this area. Yeah. I don't care about it, but I
want to learn.
To learn the information. And then the ability to just go and look at properties on my own. Yep. So every weekend, my wife, she'd be working on Saturdays a lot of times, and I would just drop my son off at my parents' house and just go look at properties. Go look at a dozen every weekend. So just going through that whole process, having access to get in the properties very easily, having mentors and people around you, it all starts adding up. It's that snowball effect where the snowball keeps getting bigger, bigger, and bigger just from doing that little something. And I think in this case, having the license was that little something where no way I would have seen that many properties. No way I would have had access to all this. I wouldn't have seen the 150, 200 homes before I actually put an offer in on the first property that we got.
Right. And on our behalf as realtors with clients, you're not going to take someone to see 150 houses because when they're not ready to buy, it's not a good use of your time.
And that's what I always say to them. Like, I paid the stupid tax. I did the work. So it's like going back to Who Not How, the book, very good book.
Yeah.
Who Not How. It's like you can figure out how to do it. That's what I did for many years. I figured out how, but now I became the who. So it's like, okay, you can go see 200 properties yourself. That's fine. Never going to stop you from doing that. But I've got the who side of things of how to do it.
Yeah, and I think when your niche, at least in part, is house hackers, it's great because you can go look at any property with anyone. Because if they don't like it, you have 5 other people who might like it. You're not going to balance them against each other, but like they have first opportunity. They say, "Oh, this doesn't work for me," and you're like, "Well, let me look. Who else does this work for?" And when that's your thing, and multis, and you know how to work, it's kind of easy to say, "Hey, I just saw this one. This one actually really may work for you." You're gonna have to bid against 12 to 30 people, but welcome to North Jersey.
Yeah, which is very common. A lot of times I see that one property, I walk through it, and then it's just a text message. I'm like, "Does it work? No, we want to see another one." I text 5 people. Let's meet 123 Main Street right now. All right, let's go. Boom,
yeah, I mean, everybody's on a different journey. Everybody likes different things. So you have to really see. And like you said, a lot of that is in the upkeep level of the home. Are you comfortable with this? Does it smell good? No, it doesn't smell good. So it might not be for you. And again, what do you think about this? I've always said house hacking is very important. And you've learned this firsthand that all people are on the same page. So if you're showing clients and just say it's a husband and wife or any partnership and one party is into it and the other's not, you're never going to sell a house that way because one party doesn't want a house hack. They want to live in a single family. Have you come across that? I think it's really important that people be on the same page.
Yeah, and that is definitely something that I start from I guess it goes hand in hand with, figuring where your liquid cash is, your finances, are you willing to do this, is making sure you're on the same page. And I always have that conversation. I do not want to be a divorce counselor. You need to make sure you're both on the same page. Otherwise, we're wasting everyone's time.
And
right
you want to have, I mean, for people like us, real estate's fun. And I even want, for my clients, I want it to be fun. I don't want it to be a drag. So when they send, a property that's in a flood zone that needs 300K and they can't afford it, we tell them, hey, this one's not for you, because we're not going to enjoy looking at it. The first thing you're going to say is, oh, this not for me. So I'm going to tell you in advance. Have you run into that as well? The kind of over expectations, or because of our market being so crazy, there's people who just keep like averaging down, and then they're like looking at REOs, and you're like, what? You have an FHA, like it's not going to work here. Have you found it's tough in our market because the prices just don't match up?
Yeah, absolutely. I have some clients right now that, they want to go lower offers. I'm like, I know what you want to do. I'm like, I want that too, but you don't want to be here for the next 3 years and then look back and be like, wow, if we just offered what you said to offer the first time, we would have owned that property. Yeah. But now we're 3 years later and it's, 10% more, and we're finally getting to that point. So I think a lot of it has to do with getting an offer in early on, just so you can see the process, because it's new. You're first home buyer. So it's like, let's try and get that offer in right now. Don't have to be strong. Don't have to be, super competitive.
Let's go through the process.
To see it, because I'm very, very good at getting information back from the listing agent. I have conversations. I get respected in that order. And most of the time, they're going to give me honest information back. And they can say, okay, there was 8 bidders on this home. 5 of them were over ask. 2 of them were substantially over ask.
Right.
And now I can say, here, this is my information. This is where we need to be. Is every property going to be like this? No, but this is a really good indication of what to expect in our market.
Yeah, I agree. I think that everybody needs that, hey, you came in 18th out of 19th, so maybe we need to adjust your strategy a little. I know you thought, and your dad said that you've never bid over for a house, but we're going to show you in 30 days that this multifamily sold for $120,000 over asking. And then we do need to prove our case, usually to the parents in the background or somebody giving advice. But I think everyone needs to take it on the chin in North New Jersey just to kind of understand, like, we're not lying. We're not trying to get you to bid. They told us they're getting 13 offers. We can't go at asking price. Like, it just doesn't work in our market. It's not a thing.
It's just wild, but it's like, that's part of the process.
Yeah. So specifically in terms of like towns, how hard is it for you to get people, say someone that come to you, this is something that I always deal with, and I think it might help listeners. They say they're willing to house hack anywhere. We know that that's not true, but it's also hard to use our time as the agent trying to help a house hacker, just showing like 20, areas. How are you getting people to pin I try to get them to pin it down to 3. Sometimes that becomes 5 if they're kind of all clustered together. But what's your conversation around that? Because that may help listeners themselves start to just tighten up their towns so they can get better service from their real estate agent.
Yeah, that's a great question. And a lot of that has to do with regulations. There's a lot of towns that I just don't step foot in, because at the end of the day, if the laws and regulations are in place to not make it landlord friendly, to incentivize to an extent tenants to not be good tenants, the last thing I want to do is put my reputation and name on the line for you to find out that being a landlord does stink. Yeah. And New Jersey gets a bad reputation for that. New
Jersey's tough enough, but there are towns with rent control that it is an issue that we have to be aware of, right?
Yeah. So a lot of times, I always let my clients know, like, look, we're 10 years in. We are yet to miss a single payment of rent. I don't care what the numbers look like. I don't care how good the numbers look on a property. You tell me how good the numbers look if no one's paying you. They don't look good. They look really bad. So if you want to repeat a strategy of literally over a decade of collecting every single payment of rent, and that's even go back to the single family, because we were actually house hacking on that single family. We had a roommate in there. So even go back that far, that's the strategy I bring to the table. What markets work and don't work? There are markets that are just not going to be good. So I try to steer away from that, because it's I want to see you succeed. I want to see you repeat what is working. So then it's just a matter of, what do you need to do? What's great is there's a lot of at-home working. So that's wonderful. So now it's like, okay, you're telling me you work from home. So we don't need to be, to be in certain areas. We don't need to be next to the George Washington Bridge or whatever, like we could be a little bit further west. And then it's just a matter of where they have to work. If they have to work in the city, okay. You do realize that there's parts of Bergen County that you can get into New York City very fast by a car, but you can get into the same amount of time via bus or train and pay a little bit less, but get higher rents.
Exactly.
So once I have these conversations and then I get, yes, that makes sense, Shawn. Yes, that makes sense, Shawn. Okay. I just want to let you know that if I threw a dart against the map of New Jersey, I would want it to land in Essex County most of the time. Is it every time? Absolutely not. But in my opinion, this is where I see one of the greatest returns. So,
I mean, the appreciation itself is out of control. It's not stopping, and it's never going to stop the way that it looks. I mean, but for just a few areas, which honestly, almost all of them are appreciating in some way, some just slower than others, but nothing's really going backwards. I think that's a good point. Let's talk landlording a little bit, because I think these new, like we were saying before, a new house hacker, you come in, then you have to be a landlord. How have you been successful as a landlord picking the right tenants while also, of course, complying with fair housing and being the agent, doing the rentals, making sure you're giving everybody a fair shake? Because it's hard. You put a rental listing up, you get 100 leads like in a day, and it's very hard to go through. We manage a lot of them. It's a lot of intake. How are you making sure, as not just the homeowner, but the landlord, that's a long-term thing? Because like you said, it's not worth much if you're not getting any rent.
Yeah. So, if you're owner occupying and you're actually living in your house hack, and get a lot more grace with that because the owner occupied laws, which is good. But at the end of the day, I always make sure that everyone is able to apply. To make sure that they're always doing the NTN, all that kind of stuff, the background checks, all that. Obviously you're limited to the background checks now, but you get what I'm saying, the credit, everything like that.
Yeah.
So I make sure they go through that process, and then I just stay true to where I know works. I don't go with the low credit. I make sure that the application's filled out. I'll call past employers, all that kind of stuff. It's pretty basic in that capacity, but a lot of it is just second nature. It's like a spidey sense, I guess, at the end of the day, where you start learning these things, and you get used to, I kid you not, me and my wife always talk about this, is just like, one day we just want to pick it based off of what we feel is the right person, because we're like 99% accurate. We're like, they pull up and we're just like, nope.
I feel that way when I'm selling houses too, of my own. Like I flip a house and I sell it, I'm like, I just don't have a good vibe. I feel like I'm gonna pull out an inspection, and I think when you are owner occupied, there's, it is more important. You especially, you have 4 kids. So it's like, okay, well, we're choosing someone who's going to be in close proximity to 4 of our kids all the time. And I don't think anybody can tell you not to take that more seriously. Like that's just it's an important concern. But I think that sometimes people think, oh, well, I'll just hire, property management. They don't care who they put into your house. This would be the biggest mistake that you're going to make as a brand new investor, especially a house hacker. You have to pick your own tenant, do it the right way, and make sure that you're going to be in a livable situation, or else the knocks on your door will never stop. The fights about laundry and parking spaces will never stop, and they'll get petty. And they're supposed to be caretakers of your house. So if they're next door and they're not caretaking it, and you have 4 kids to take care of, it's just not going to be a fun situation.
Absolutely. And that's something I always love to say, is like, anyone can buy and sell a house. Being completely transparent, it's not this amazing thing that only a few select people can do. I can buy and sell a house very easy. My job is to get you to a place where you are on the pathway to financial freedom. That includes finding the right property, finding ones that make sense, and then being a landlord, self-managing. Because the last thing I want you to do is hire a property management company taking 10% every month, because you're never going to get cash flow.
Yeah.
If that's the case. Maybe years down the road where you want to scale things back and not have to worry about it so much, okay, you can have that discussion. But when you're house hacking, you're learning the property management. You're learning that screening is 90% of property management.
Yeah.
Most of it is just them having their systems in place, which, we have systems. It's very easy to do. But it's really just getting those basics of how to be a landlord, how to find the right property. And, that's what I think guys like me and you specialize in, where we're not just coming back, I can sell a house overnight. I can buy a house very easily. It's not difficult, but to be successful and be on that pathway to having a system and all that kind of stuff, that's where we specialize.
Yeah, but that's a great point, because what we're looking for as investor-friendly agents is repeat business. And the better that we do on the buy, that means they're going to be able to buy again. The better that we help them rent, then we're going to re-rent when those tenants leave. And that's a consistent source of business that realtors forget, which is why working with investors is so important. They're going to come back and do more business, where I love, just regular home buyers, but they buy a home, and then, if you're good at follow-up, they call you in 7 to 10 years to sell and buy again. But that's 7 to 10 years. I like the people who are going to do 7 to 10 deals in a couple of years. That's just a better scale. Awesome. Shawn, where is the best place for people to find you? I know on Instagram, you're Shawn, and that's SHAWN, Sells NJRE. That's where you can find Shawn on Instagram, where he is active. And you have a YouTube channel as well, correct?
Yeah, I just started in August. That's my little baby right now.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's having so much fun. It's my manifesting and everything going on. I'm like YouTube.
Yeah.
Really one of those things that, if you're on edge, I wish I pulled the trigger sooner on it, but a lot of the things just kept coming up in my life, and I'm like,
yeah. Once you start, you just have to not stop. I mean, like that's what I don't care. I literally open up the camera, film the video, post it, could care less, no editing, really not going to go down that rabbit hole. It takes too much time. Any other places that they can find you? Best way to get in touch with you?
That's the top two, and then I'd say maybe Bigger Pockets in there as well. But it's Bigger Pockets Messenger isn't the easiest to use, and I only check it all the time. So I always say Instagram and then YouTube. I'm pretty active on both, but Bigger Pockets is the third place, I guess you could say.
Awesome, man. Well, I hope I see you in the field too, and we'll have to make a point to meet up at a good one, and check it out, or a really bad one, which could be a good one. But I appreciate your time, and I'm glad we can finally get you on the show.
Absolutely, Jonathan. Appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. That was Shawn McEnteer. I'm Jonathan Green. We'll see you next episode. I hope you enjoyed that episode of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with me, Jonathan Green. And I just want to remind you, and this is always an uncomfortable part, I don't want you to think that I'm begging for you to like, subscribe, follow, do whatever you have to do for the podcast, leave a 5-star review. But if you like the podcast and you think it adds value in the real estate investing sphere, then just do me a personal favor. Like the podcast, follow it, share it when you can with your friends, and be so kind as to write a 5-star review if you believe it deserves a 5-star review up against what else is out there. I would really appreciate it, and I hope you keep listening.